Iran is no longer just measured in missiles and fuel prices. It's also hitting the dinner table. Across Asia and Australia, the cost of farming is spiraling out of control. The war is crushing Asia's farmers at the worst possible time. In Thailand, the Philippines and Bangladesh, farmers are entering their key sowing periods. But many are choosing to skip planting entirely. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed, 33% of the world's urea fertilizer supplies have disappeared from the market. Skyrocketing energy costs and the fertilizer shortages are making it impossible to turn profit. Experts warn that this reduced yield will trigger a massive supply shock across the continent and beyond. In Brazil and Argentina, surging diesel prices and the soaring cost of shipping through high-risk zones have doubled trucking and logistics expenses. These rising overheads are squeezing margins just as the next major planting season looms, forcing producers to scale back on essential crop nutrients. And the latest numbers from the United Nations are alarming. The FAO Food Price Index jumped to 130.7 points in April, a more than three-year high. Driven by geopolitical tensions and surging energy costs, global commodity prices rose 1.6% in just 1 month. From grains to oils, the cost of trading food internationally is now 2% higher than this time last year. And while many foods are expensive, beef is the standout record breaker, reaching an all-time high. The FAO Meat Price Index climbed to 129.4 in April, up more than 6% from last year. For more on this, we're joined by Swaran Singh, who's a professor of international relations at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome back to the program, Professor. Now, with 33% of the world's urea fertilizer missing from the market currently, how quickly will we see this translate into a full-scale grain shortage across Asia?
The predictions are that we are perhaps already moving in that direction. For example, studies by Nature, by Science Direct, by IFRI in Paris are already indicating that we are clearly moving in that direction where this constant disruption and shortages of fuel, fertilizer, food is going to really not just kickstart, but will have lingering impact even when supposing Strait of Hormuz ultimately is opened. And that is something which is going to have clearly impact on the social fabric of several nations, particularly the low-income countries where household consumption constitutes roughly around 36-35% of the income, compared to, of course, advanced countries, about 9 to 10%. Are going to face, you mentioned countries like Bangladesh, Thailand, are already facing a big challenge that farmers are not going to sow. This is the monsoon time in this region. This also applies to India. And the constant shortages of fertilizer and disruption of shipping, where the cost of, for example, refrigerator containers has doubled up to $7,000, is really a scary scenario which is unfolding. And what is important to understand is that either whether it is inflationary trends or it is price hikes driven by shortages, these are not going to switch off the moment ceasefire turns into a kind of a peace deal. They are going to have lingering impact, and therefore nations after nations are now preparing to tighten their belt. And I think lots of staple crops particularly are very, very sensitive to inputs like fertilizers, and there will be a sharper fall in food production. And the Food and Agricultural Organization is also predicting that kind of trend where food prices will go up, and then again prices will stay higher even for the coming year. In that sense, it's not going to really be easy to control price hike immediately. So I think it's a challenge that most nations are gearing up, and they are tightening their belt, taking austerity measures. And we are all hoping that the Strait of Hormuz opens up faster. And your reports are mentioning that President Trump is visiting Beijing. And these two leaders might give certain positive indications of where that ceasefire, which is increasingly fragile, is moving. And hopefully some kind of arrangement can be made. so that the constant shortages of fertilizers, and driven by that the shortages of food, and of course constant shortages of energy are disrupting global markets, and is threatening several societies in terms of their social unrest itself.
Professor Swaran Singh from Jawaharlal Nehru University, thank you very much for joining us.